My videos very often include exercises that are linked to the topic that I'm teaching. So if I'm teaching a topic, then there might be some exercises with arpeggios or scales that fit with whatever I'm talking about in the video. Very often I get the comment on YouTube and social media that I don't want to do this exercise because I don't think it's a musical exercise and I only do musical exercises. And that made me think about, well, what is a musical exercise? When is an exercise musical? And does a judgment like that actually say more about the person making the judgment than the exercise? So that's what I want to talk about in this video. I think it's interesting to figure out, well, what is it we learn from different exercises and when is an exercise musical? And I'm going to do that by just talk about that generally and also go over some different exercises that are extremely useful and that are maybe often considered unmusical. My name is Larsen. If you want to improve the way that you play jazz guitar and check out some interesting music theory, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. The first candidate to be labeled as unmusical is probably when you're practicing scales and arpeggios. And that makes a lot of sense. It's the kind of exercise that you can actually practice and be really mechanical about it and have no emotional content in what you're doing. At the same time, you also have people who practice scales and arpeggios like this. When you listen to Pat Metheny playing here where he's warming up, then it is clear that he is really making music. There's really some musical phrasing happening here and he's still just playing scales and arpeggios. In fact, it's mostly just scales and basic triads what's happening here. At the same time, if you take a listen to the most musical exercise that you really can have, which would be making music, then somebody playing over a backing track on Facebook might sound like this. As our anonymous guitar player from Facebook here clearly demonstrates, it's quite possible to actually practice making music and then be completely unmusical about it. You can of course also just play and perform a piece of music and then be completely unmusical. And everything can be wrong. It can be that there is no emotion in the notes that you're playing. You're not hearing what you're playing. It's not a melody. It's not really in time. The tone is not good. This can be a matter of skill. But that also means that actually you can raise that skill level if you do some exercises that you may consider unmusical, because it's going to help you once you actually start to make music. Does that then make the exercise actually musical? So to me, I'm not so sure that labeling an exercise as musical or unmusical is necessarily that useful. I think that's really about who's playing it and what they're trying to achieve. I think it's much more important that you think about with an exercise, what is it that I want to learn? What is the goal of the exercise? What is it that I'm going to get better at if I keep doing this exercise? Of course, you can also think about, well, if I play this exercise, can I play it in a way that it becomes actual music? And is that useful? And I think that's really what you want to think about. So to talk a little bit about that, I'm going to break down a few exercises that are quite common and also quite often called unmusical, and then talk a little bit about what you learn and what you're actually learning from them also, because on the surface, they might appear to be robotic and systematic, but if you do them, they are also going to teach you some other things. And if you look a little bit deeper at the skills that you're going to learn, then maybe they are a little bit more worthwhile. I think I've heard a million times that people say that if they practice with a metronome, then they get to sound like robots and it's unmusical and unnatural. And of course, I can see where that's coming from. At the same time, as a student or as a musician from my own practice, but certainly also with my students, I see that when people are practicing with a metronome, they gain a lot of control and they get a lot more freedom, and they also learn how to play precise with a good tone. So I really think there are more pros than cons when it comes to metronome practice. I think you need to look at it in a little bit different way. Let's say that you're practicing a scale with a metronome. So of course that sounds like you're just practicing sort of a predictable row of notes with a mechanical click. But you can also look at it in a different way. You can also look at it saying, well, I'm playing a scale, and a scale is a very simple melody. Just listen to Pat Metheny when he plays a scale. That sounds like music. You're practicing that with a metronome, so you're actually playing together with a metronome. And that means that you're practicing playing in an ensemble situation. And trust me, if you do that, your band and your bandmates will thank you. The never-ending scale exercise is an exercise where you're playing over a chord progression, but you're just playing a scale movement, and then you change scale whenever the chords change. So if you have to change scale to get to the next chord, then once you've played one bar of C major 7 and it gets to an A7 altered, you need to change to the A7 altered scale and then continue there. And you want to keep continuing the same movement until you get to the highest note of the instrument or in the position, and then you turn back. So the point of this exercise, because this may seem pretty systematic and it may not really be clear why that's useful to check out, but actually what it is helping you do here is that you get to think about how you get to the next point where the next scale is. You need to, before you start playing that scale, think ahead and know where you're going to end up. So you have to think ahead, and this is something that is so important when it gets to playing music. There are so many things we're playing. Just analyze any bebop solo. Half the lines in there are going to be pointing towards the target note in the next chord or in the next bar. So this part of thinking ahead is really important to practice. And it's also really going to help you, especially if you're checking out pieces with like really complicated chord changes like giant steps, or if you're really just spelling out all the changes in a rhythm change. This is a great exercise to check out. That's also what you really get from it, and that's why you want to do something like this. That's the skill you want to improve. You don't have to worry about playing like that. You just have to worry about trying to practice something where you decide a simple melody, which is then a scale movement, and you can take that through the changes, and you have the overview of your instrument and of the scales and the arpeggios, so that that's possible. The reason that I can keep on publishing videos every week is that there is a community of people over on Patreon that are supporting the channel. I'm very grateful for their support. It's because of them that I can keep on making all these jazz guitar and music theory videos. If you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. And if you join us over on Patreon, I can also give you something in return for your support. An important part of being a jazz musician is also that you build your own language and your own vocabulary, and that you explore new things and add them to the solos that you're playing. I really think that's part of the tradition. That you may not agree with me on that, but I really think that it is essential that we also just develop our own language as jazz musicians. And a part of that is exploring new melodies and finding new ways of coming up with melodies. And that actually means that sometimes you also want to just try and practice things through scales, maybe some things that are a little bit less obvious, like playing shell voicings as arpeggios in a position, or drop 2 voicings or something like that. Stuff that is not really in most songs that we come across, but you want to come up with some new sounds. You want to explore what is possible, and that means that you have to practice some things that may seem maybe really something that you're coming up with and thinking I'm coming from a theoretical point of view, but you have to play it and you have to listen to it and see if it resonates with you and if it's something that you can turn into music, and only you can tell that, so you have to check it out. And that's why you want to do some exercises like that. This is of course just my opinion on these topics, and I'm curious what you guys think, because I think it is important that we check out how we label exercises, and maybe it doesn't always make sense to label them musical or unmusical. Maybe there are other things that you want to think about when you're thinking about exercises. So leave a comment if you have something to add to this. If you want to check out another video where I'm talking about some of the things that I think you are probably wasting your time on if you start practicing it too much, then check out this video. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. That's about it for this time. Thank you for watching, and until next time.